He simply stood, unable to speak. Seven's eyes opened wide and his mouth gaped.
Gape.
After a few long moments, Seven at last managed to speak.
Hey, what is this place?
A massive room stretched out in front of them, more a cavern than a room. Its vastness was oppressive and it bore down on Seven and Junpei. It was not empty, however. The entire room was filled with lines upon lines of beds. There were simple things, little more than pipe and thin mattresses.
Is this a hospital?
He had at least been able to put a name to the harsh scent that pervaded the room. The room was full of the clean smell of antiseptic solution. In the center of the room were shelves stacked with medicine and a number of medical devices, the function of which Junpei did not know. More importantly, however, on the back wall of the room were 4 doors. 3 of them were emblazoned with large single-digit numbers made with thick red paint. The door on the left was labeled 3. The second door from the left had no number, but the third had been given a 7. The door on the right bore an 8. There could be no doubt they were numbered doors.
Oh,
in der Tat kein Zweifel, dass das
ich bin mir ganz
Türen
sicher,
sind mit Nummern drauf.
Das sind die sogenannten
Numbered
doors.
It did strike Junpei as strange, however, that the door between 3 and 7 should be blank. What, he wondered, could it mean?
Let's take a look at those doors. I think they're numbered. Yeah, good idea.
The 3 of them threaded their way through the beds toward the back of the room. Upon reaching them, they processed to investigate each door in turn, but to no avail.
Yup. Locked, just like I thought. Naturally. After all, there are rules to the nonary game, and to allow these doors to open easily would violate those rules. Unless we can authenticate ourselves with the red, the numbered doors will... Whoa, check this out.
Suddenly Seven spoke up, interrupting Snake.
Look at the reds. There's nothing on it. Huh? Don't you remember the red back at the main staircase? If there wasn't anyone in it, it said vacant on the little screen, remember? Oh yeah, you're right. But this one... There's nothing, right? You think it's broken? Only one way to find out.
Junpei and the others put their hands on the panel, but nothing happened. The red refused to change. They tried pulling the lever and still nothing. As they soon discovered, it was only the red on door 8 that seemed to be malfunctioning. The red on door 7 and the red on door 3, none of them worked. What they wondered, did it mean?
They've gotta be broken. Man, that bastard. I didn't think Zero was the kind of guy who'd screw around with something like this. Whoa. Zero's been prepared for everything so far, and you're saying he's gonna make a mistake now? Well, that's the only thing I can think of. This thing ain't working at all.
While Junpei and Seven talked, Snake busied himself with examining the red. After a time, he lowered his hands and spoke.
It seems as if some of the internal hardware has been removed. Internal hardware? That is what I said. Take a look at the underside of this red, if you please.
So unsympathisch. Junpei obliged and bent over to look at the underside of the device. A long, thin slit ran along the bottom of it. As he looked harder, he realized it was more of a slot than a slit, and it was clearly meant to accommodate some manner of electrical device. The other 2 reds were the same. Something had clearly been removed from all 3 of them.
I get it. So the reds aren't working because somebody pulled out their guns. So I assume. But why? And who? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. I have no idea. Why on earth would I know something like that?
Just then, they heard the sound of a door opening. The 3 of them turned and saw Akane. Oh no, Junpei thought it's...
June!
She stopped short, surprised to see them, and was nearly bowled over by the rest of their companions,
Ich glaube, June möchte Junpei an die Brüste fassen.
who were coming through the door behind her. Ace, Santa, Clover, and Lotus all poured out the door, each of them as surprised as the last to see Junpei, Snake, and Seven. Junpei and Seven were, for the moment, at a loss for words.
What are you guys doing? Why are you...
After a moment of silence and surprise, everyone suddenly began to talk, desperate to exchange information. They talked about the rooms they'd been through and how they'd ended up in the same place. Of course, none of it was very useful information, but that hardly mattered.
Bullshit.
They were happy to simply see one another again. Although the level of cheer varied greatly from person to person, each one of them was wearing some manner of smile, almost as though they had already forgotten about the death of the ninth man.
Fuck that guy, right? Yeah, fuck that guy.
No, thought Junpei, perhaps that wasn't it. Perhaps thoughts of his death were what drove them to smile at one another. Not in a morbid or hateful way, no, the ninth man had died, but they were still alive, and that was something to be happy about. A sort of simple, uncomplicated joy, Junpei thought, the joy of being alive. Still alive. He felt sorry for the ninth man, but more than anything, Junpei was just happy to be alive.
Still alive. This is bad though. If the red isn't working, we can't keep going. What about that big hallway? Maybe there's somewhere in there we might be able to go. No, there's nothing there. The 5 of us had a quick look. There were a great many rooms, although none of them appeared to have held patience for quite some time. Patience? You mean all those doors are for hospital rooms? Yes. Apparently they have a number of individual rooms in addition to this large central room. There was a door down at the end of the hallway too, but it was locked. It had one of those solar system marked things on it. It was the Jupiter symbol. Jupiter? Fuck. I wonder what it means. Jesus Christ.
Confusion seemed to be the consensus.
That reminds me, what's the deal with this big room anyway? What is this thing? Was this some kind of huge passenger ship?
No one, not even Snake, appeared ready to offer an answer until Seven unexpectedly spoke up.
I bet it's a hospital ship. In fact, it's probably the Gigantic. The Gigantic?
Junpei looked at Seven, shocked both by his knowledge and the apparent identity of their prison. He was not the only one.
What's the Gigantic?
Seven nodded to Lotus and began to speak.
The Gigantic.
He explained that she had been a sister ship to the Titanic, built in the early 20th century. The Titanic had two sister ships who were identical to one another in nearly every aspect. The Gigantic was said to be one of them. She was initially intended to be a passenger liner, like the Titanic, but soon after the ship was launched, the First World War began, and she was pressed into duty by the British Navy as a hospital ship. Sometime later, the Gigantic was damaged by a German mine in the Aegean Sea. She managed to run aground after the incident and consequently was not sunk. Wait, then... What then happened to the Gigantic after her fateful encounter in the Aegean Sea? One theory ran that a man named Lord Gordain purchased her. Lord Gordain, it seemed, had been one of the few survivors of the Titanic tragedy, and that trauma had turned him into an obsessive collector of all things related to the Titanic. As his obsession deepened, he began to desire the Titanic itself. That, of course, was impossible. The Titanic lay at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. The Gigantic, however, had not suffered such a dire fate, and as she was identical to her sister ship, she caught Lord Gordain's eye.
So you're saying this Lord Gordain... Ich hab in meinem Kopf immer Lord Gondon gesagt, aber Gordain stimmt wahrscheinlich eher.
Keine Ahnung, ehrlich gesagt.
Ich glaube nicht, dass es Franzose ist, deswegen würde ich auch eher Gordain sagen. Yeah. At least I think I am. That's impossible. No way we're in some boat that's almost 100 years old. Pipe down, just pay attention. What? That's it? Well, have you got any proof? Proof? proof that this ship is really the gigantic? Well, this ship's got stuff that's like the Titanic and a hospital ship. So I just figured. Oh, for goodness, don't tell me that's your only reason. No, I've got more. Like? Well, I mean...
Seven looked around desperately, doing anything to avoid meeting Lotus' piercing stare. He scratched his head for a moment and then gave up. Yeah. Finally, he opened his mouth.
I don't know.
Lotus sighed and shook her head.
I guess your memory isn't back yet, is it? No, sorry.
Then, almost as if to save Seven from further embarrassment...
Die Gigantic wurde übrigens umbenannt in Britannica, wenn ich mich nicht irre, als sie in den Dienst des Zweiten Weltkrieges getreten ist. Das habe ich gelernt, als ich das Video recherchiert habe, für die ich das Video gemacht habe. Aber vielleicht war es auch Britannia oder so, was ähnliches.
A bell began to ring from far away. It sounded as though it was the clock at the main stairway. Junpei counted each chime carefully. 10, 11, 12.
It's midnight. And we still got 6 hours left, right? Let's just get moving. We gotta find that heart where the rats are missing. That's all well and good, but where are we going to look? Well, we all have already searched the big patient room.
They had been examining the room as they talked.
But we haven't found anything. Right. Well, there's only one thing left to do. Just one? Well, not just one. Oh.
Huh?
Play the piano. Wait a minute. Are you telling me we have to search all of these rooms? Well, you already checked some of them out before you came here, right? We checked each a single room, so 5 rooms in total. Alright then, that's 5 rooms we don't have to search. If we split up, it won't be that bad. If each of us can do 6 rooms apiece, we'll have the other 48 rooms cleared in no time. There are 48 other rooms?
Lotus did not seem excited by the prospect. Seven fidgeted nervously before responding.
Maybe?
After some discussion, the 8 of them decided which rooms to begin with and in what order they would go. Junpei was chosen to search the rooms on the starboard side, moving from fore to aft. They also determined when they would return to report their findings the next time the clock sounded the time. When it did, they would meet back in the large central room full of beds. If during their search any of them were to locate the missing components, they were to yell for the others. If this strategy failed, they'd return to discuss their opinions later. Oder Options stand da wahrscheinlich. The details decided, they left to begin searching. Out into the hallway they went, each to the rooms they'd been assigned. However, what? From far away, Junpei heard the bell ring. It did so only once. It was 1 a.m.
Ich fand es so gut, dass sie diese ganzen Regeln so riesig erklärt haben, was sie gerade so besprochen haben.
Ja.
Es war halt egal. Weil dann haben sie einfach, okay, haben wir nichts gefunden.
Ja.
Oder er hat nichts gefunden.
He jogged through the entrance of the large hospital room to find 6 of the others already there. Ace, Santa, Clover, June, Seven and Lotus. They had gathered in front of the door number 8.
Wollen wir einfach eigentlich mal kurz speichern vielleicht, zur Sicherheit. Start drücken. Oder so. Komischer Sound, ne?
Das ist bestimmt eingesprochen von jemandem.
So.
Would you like to quit? No.
Aber
gute Idee. Ja, nee, ist total richtig. Nochmal von vorne. They had gathered in front of door number 8, or perhaps to be accurate, they had gathered in front of the red next to door number 8. Had one of them found the missing piece?
What happened, guys?
It was June who answered him.
Jumpy, look!
She was pointing at the red. He pushed through the others until he stood in front of it.
Vakant!
Immediately he knew what she had meant.
Vakant.
The display on the front of the red vacant. Junpei sighed.
Come on, guys, who was it? I thought we were supposed to yell if we found it. Well...
Junpei wondered why she was hesitating. The others looked as confused as June but kept their mouths shut.
What the hell? What's up with you guys?
They all knew something he didn't, and Junpei wasn't about to leave things that way. Finally, Lotus frowned and spoke.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. You don't know? When I got back, it was already like this. There was no one else here. That means I was the first one back, but the missing parts were already back in the red.
Junpei looked at the bottom of the red again, just to make sure. The slot that had been open on the bottom was now covered with metal. Clearly, whatever had been missing had been returned.
What about the other two? They are the same.
Junpei quickly examined the other two boxes. Satisfied that they were also repaired, but still very confused, he returned to the others.
Alright, I just want to be sure here. Nobody has any idea what the hell happened here, right?
Ace and June nodded silently. Seven raised his hands as if to say, "Not me," and Santa just shrugged. Only Clover lowered her head and did nothing.
Huh? Wait a minute.
That was when he noticed.
Where's Snake?
Junpei swept his eyes across the room a second time, but Snake was nowhere to be seen.
Does that mean that he found them? I've no idea. There's nothing to suggest it, but nothing to suggest he didn't either. I don't suppose we'll know until we can ask him in person. Well, whatever he did or didn't do, he's pretty damn late. What the hell is he up to? Maybe he's lost. Yeah, well, that seems likely. Dude can't see. I know how he gets around in the first place.
Clover raised her head.
No, that's impossible.
Suddenly she was shouting.
Yeah, my brother's blind. But he's got... Ich muss da irgendeine Stimme finden, die nicht so quietschig ist. Yeah, my brother's blind, but he's got really good hearing. He can get around as well as anyone who can see. Aber ist ganz okay, jetzt wirkt
Ja.
doch kindlich. So, he couldn't get lost. That's impossible.
Clover had started to shake and the knuckles of her hands had gone white. She spun around before she did, Junpei noticed tears welling up in her eyes.
I'm gonna go look for him.
The words were barely out of her mouth when she began to run.
Hey! Hold on, Clover, wait!
Junpei cried out to her, but he was too slow.
Hey! Clover, wait!
She kept going, and before anyone else could react, she was gone.
Damn it! What should we do now? Well, the red is working now. No, we're not leaving two people behind. We should go look for them. Oh man, this ain't good. Oh yes, what an excellent idea. We just wasted a bunch of time looking for some piece of electronic junk. Now let's waste some more by looking for a couple of idiots. Then remain here if you feel you must, but there is no time. We've only 5 hours left.
Junpei and the others nodded to one another and took off at a run. In front of the stairs that led to B deck, they decided to split up. They quickly assigned search areas and went their separate ways. Soon only 2 of them were left. Those 2 were Junpei and June, who had been a few steps behind the others.
Alright, we should go too. Yeah, let's go. But where should we start? Let's see. Okay. Wir könnten jetzt alles durchlaufen. Das Ergebnis aber, dass wir sie in keinem dieser Räume finden. Deswegen können wir direkt sagen, back to the hospital room. Dann überspringen wir dieses Part.
Ach so, okay. Let's go back. Ach so, nee, das ist jetzt...
Let's go back to the large hospital room. Huh? Why would you go back? Well, I mean, we might have just missed him, you know? Maybe he really was just late. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, let's go.
Das macht keinen Sinn, wenn ihr gerade hier steht. They turned and ran down the hallway to their right. On their way to the large hospital room, Junpei and June noticed Santa standing next to number 3 door. Junpei paused. What should Junpei do?
Wir müssten nicht mit ihm sprechen, aber lasst uns das trotzdem mal machen.
Okay. Junpei and June walked up to Santa.
What are you doing? What? You can't tell? I'm checking out the rats. Why? Is there something bothering you? What? Is it not bothering you? Huh? The guts of this rat. Why wouldn't you wonder who the hell put it back in here? Yeah, that's true. Well, I'm curious too, but Who do you think did it?
Santa's eyes narrowed as he looked at June. She shook her head.
I don't know. Well, what about you, Junpei? Who do you think fixed this thing for us? Das habe ich keine. Deswegen, und ich weiß es ja, deswegen.
Ich weiß es nicht mehr.
Lasse ich es dich sagen. Aber sag auch, was dein Gedanke ist.
Ja, Snake ist ja das, worauf es zielt. Zero wäre komisch. I don't know. Ich nehme einfach Snake.
But it seems like it would have to be Snake, wouldn't it? Maybe he got back here before any of us. He found the parts somewhere, put them back, and then went through the one of the doors. No, that's not possible. You have to authenticate with at least 3 people, or the Red Hood won't open the door. There's no way a single person could get through there by themselves. Yeah, I guess you're right.
It was a stupid mistake, and Junpei knew it.
Stupid, Tom.
How had he made such a foolish miscalculation, and how had Santa noticed it so quickly? Perhaps he just wasn't as clever as he used to be. Junpei shook his head sadly.
Fertig gemacht wirst. So in other words, one of us is the person who fixed the rat.
Santa grinned.
Bingo! We have a winner. But if that's true, then the person who did it doesn't want the rest of us to know. To know they fixed the rat. Yeah. But why? No idea. Maybe if they come clean on that, it means we'd find out something else. Something bad. Something bad? I don't know. But whatever it is, it's gotta be worth hiding. Of course, it could have something to do with Snake's disappearance. You think maybe they did something to Snake? It's not out of the question.
Junpei stared at Santa. There was something about him that made Junpei wary. At first he'd assumed the other man wasn't terribly clever, but Junpei was beginning to think he would need to re-evaluate that assessment. When Santa spoke again, his voice was quiet.
Look, if you trust anybody in this game, you're gonna lose. You gotta be careful. The person you trust the most could turn out to be the one who stabs you in the back.
With that depressing suggestion, he turned and quietly walked away. Junpei and June looked at one another and smiled awkwardly.
I trust you, right? Yeah. Where would they go next? Und erneut, wir können alles durchsuchen, das hat aber keinen Sinn, deswegen können wir einfach... Warte, ich guck mal. Yep, finish searching.
Okay. They looked everywhere they could think of, but Snake was nowhere to be found. Lotus looked around at 6 frustrated faces and spoke.
We can't keep looking for Snake. Wherever he is, he's not here. We need to get moving.
Junpei couldn't disagree with what she was saying. Snake seemed to have completely disappeared. There was no point to wasting any more time. The others seemed to be having similar thoughts, but they stayed silent. Finally, 7 spoke.
We don't got a choice. Lotus is right. We're not gonna find Snake. There's a problem though. We've gotta figure out who's gonna go through which door. Yes, I have a proposal.
She walked back and forth across the floor, her heels clicking against the wood. Finally, she stopped.
Why don't we decide on one person to sacrifice? Sacrifice? Well, perhaps that's a bit of a harsh word, but yes. You've all figured it out by now, haven't you? We can't all make it through these doors. If we split into 2 teams of 4 and 3 people respectively, then 3 people will be left behind. If we split into 2 teams of 5 and 2 people respectively, then 2 people will be left behind. But if we split into 2 groups of 3 and leave 1 person out, then only 1 person will be left behind. Leaving behind 3 people with 2 teams of 4 and 3?
Ist das eine Wahl?
Ist egal, aber ist egal, was du da auswählst. Du kannst ja das, was du
It wasn't pleasant, but she was right. There wasn't any way that the numbers worked out. If one group was 4, the other group would always have a digital route that didn't match a door. When Seven spoke, his voice was strained.
Then you're saying we gotta decide who's gonna stay behind. Yes, we do. Given our circumstances, it's logically and morally the best solution. If the other 6 are to survive, then one person has to sacrifice themselves. No, that's too cruel. What's so cruel about it? To just sacrifice someone like that. Then what's your plan? Maybe we should sacrifice 2 people instead of just 1. That's not what I meant. We shouldn't sacrifice anyone. I told you, that's not possible. Wake up! Whoa, calm down, you 2.
Santa stepped between Lotus and June.
Look, what Lotus is trying to say is that you should aim to bring the greatest amount of joy to the greatest amount of people. Pussy noch. Right? Exactly. That's how democracy works. And for that reason, I think the only fair way to decide who will be sacrificed is through a vote. What do you think? No, that's terrible. I'm not asking you. Shut up. What about you, Santa? Me? Well, I agree, I guess. Alright, that's 1 vote for. Counting mine, that's 2. 7? I can't say I agree with you, but we don't exactly have a choice. If we don't do something, we are all going to die. Glad you see it that way. Glad you get it. If I get 1 more vote, then it's decided. What about you, Clover?
Clover had moved away from the group and was sitting on one of the beds. Her whole body drooped. Drooped? Junpei didn't know if she even heard Lotus' proposal. Lotus walked over to Clover and gently laid a hand on her shoulder.
Your brother has to be behind one of the numbered doors. We searched everywhere, but we didn't find him. Doesn't that mean that he has to have gone through one of them somehow?
Clover slowly lifted her face.
Let's go look for him together, okay? If we sacrifice 1 person, then we can go look for him. You agree with me, right?
Clover nodded once.
The motion carries.
Lotus spun around and walked toward Junpei.
Now, let's start a vote too. That won't be necessary.
Ace had barely spoken for Lotus' entire speech, and everyone jumped a little. 6 pairs of eyes turned to look at him. He didn't seem to notice or even care.
I will stay. That should solve our problem, yes? Ace, what are you saying? No, you can't do that. That won't solve anything.
June's voice shook and she looked around desperately for someone to agree with her. Ace simply looked at her.
June, I'm afraid you may have misunderstood me. I said I would stay, but I never said I would sacrifice myself. Huh? I trust you, each and every one of you. I believe you'll come back for me. Whoa. There's optimistic and then there's just nuts. Those doors only go one way. You go in, you don't come out. If we go through them, you won't be able to return, correct? Yeah, true. But that will not be the case once you've escaped from the ship. What? Please, I beg you, once you've escaped, come back and rescue me. Ideally, within the time limit Zero has given us. No, that's ridiculous. There's no way we could back in time.
Finally, Junpei could hold his tongue no longer.
We've only got 5 hours left. We don't even know where the hell we are. How on earth are we gonna find someone to come and rescue you? Then perhaps you would prefer to stay instead of me? Or perhaps you would be willing to leave June behind?
Ace's voice was dignified and without a hint of cruelty or malice. Junpei had no rebuttal.
You see, there's no other choice. Then I see we've come to our conclusion. Go on. Don't worry yourselves about me. Go quickly.
Junpei stood frozen by indecision, unable to move. Junpei bit her lips. June bit her lips so hard that Junpei feared she would break
June's
the skin.
lips so hard.
Yeah. Santa stood against the wall, calm and aloof. Seven tore his beanie from his head and turned it over anxiously in his hand. Only Clover stared at Ace with an expression Junpei was unable to decipher. Lotus's attitude, however, was different from the others.
Good. Let's accept his kind offer then.
She smiled, her eyes bright. Ace answered with a smile of his own.
Good. I think this is the best for me. Perhaps I'll be able to take a nap. Perhaps it's my age, but I get tired so easily these days.
As he spoke, Ace lowered himself down to the floor next to one of the beds. From somewhere deep in the ship, Junpei suddenly heard the screeching of metal on metal. It was almost as if the ship were screaming. Would it really hold until their time limit was up? Already D-Deck was flooded. In the sudden silence, the only sound was the sad metal wail of the ship. Unsurprisingly, it was Lotus who spoke first.
Well, what are you waiting for? We're wasting time. Why don't you hurry it up?
As if a spell had been broken, the others all began to talk at once.
You're right. We should get going. That's all we can do right now. 7. Seriously. Honestly, I was getting kinda sick of listening to you guys talk. You too, Santa? I have to find my brother. Wait! All of you! Let's just calm down and think about this. There has to be a way to get everyone out. There has to be. Right, Jumpy? Say something. Yeah, let's think. There's gotta be another way.
His words sounded hollow and fake.
Fine. Forget about it. I'll figure it out on my own.
She spun around and ran toward Ace. He had slumped down next to the bed when June grabbed his arm and pulled.
Come on, Ace, please stand up. You can't give up yet. We just have to sit down together and think about this. We'll figure out a way that we can all get out of here.
Then it happened. Ace fell forward. He slumped over onto the wooden floor, his body folded in half like a box out cold.
Ace!
June cried out and dropped to her knees beside him. She put her arm around his neck and did her best to lift him up.
What happened, Ace? Say something.
She shook him frantically. His eyes fluttered open.
I'm alright.
His voice was weak and slightly slurred.
How are you fine? This.
He held out his left arm and slowly opened his hand. In it was a syringe and a small vial. The vial was empty. It had only recently been emptied. A few drops clung to the sides. There was a label taped to the side of the container. It read, Soporal Beta. Soporal Beta. Junpei had no idea what it meant, or what kind of medicine it might be.
Did you use this? Yes. It's just anesthetic. I'll be fine. Anesthetic? I found it earlier, while we were searching the hospital rooms. I thought it might be useful later. I didn't think I'd be using it on myself. Why'd you do this? Didn't I tell you? I'd like to take a nap. I really am very tired.
Junpei knew that wasn't why he'd done it. Ace had injected himself with anesthetic to forestall Junpei and June's attempts to bring him along. If he couldn't move, there was nothing they could do. He'd injected himself so that they would be forced to leave him behind.
Ace! Is there something you want to say? I'd just like to sleep a little. Could you keep it down? No! Don't, Ace! Don't fall asleep! Ah, you feel warm. So comfortable. I think I'll have a nice dream, Ace.
Ace's eyelids drooped further and
18
further,
ist lieber Ace.
almost as though he were dying.
Ace! Ace!
She shook his shoulder again and again, but this time he didn't respond.
June.
Only the gentle rising and falling of his chest told them he was alive.
Also, these trousers.
Junpei was relieved to see he was, in fact, still breathing. Du musst immer gleich schweinische Sachen da reinlesen.
Ohne Witz, er hat dann gesagt, oh, du bist warm und kommst du. Ich glaube, ich werde schöne Träume haben.
Ja, das muss man aber nicht so interpretieren.
Doch.
Nee, finde ich nicht. He lifted Ace up off the floor and laid him on the bed he'd been leaning against.
Wenn ich mir das Charakterdesign von ihr angucke, ist das naheliegend, finde ich.
When Junpei turned around, Lotus gave him a look of pity.
Well, we don't really have a choice now. We can't let his sacrifice go to waste, right?
She wasn't feeling any remorse, Junpei was sure of that. Still, he had no grounds upon which to oppose her. It felt wrong, but he had to agree. Then suddenly Santa spoke.
Yeah, but we're not done choosing yet, are we? Huh? What do you mean? Well, we haven't decided who's going in what door. Ah, yes, that's true. Well, enough of the screwing around. Let's decide. You first, Lotus. Which door you want? I want door number 8. It's the same number as my bracelet number. Got it. You're 8. You're next, 7. Which one do you want? I'll take 7. I can't get along with that old lady. What? What did you just say?
Her face distorted by rage, Lotus took a step toward 7. He threw up his hands and made a face like a child caught with his hand in a cookie jar.
Ugh. You're going to get it next time.
She shot him a glare that would have melted steel, then turned and stalked off.
Alright, who's next?
Santa's gaze moved across the 3 people left. Finally, they stopped on Junpei.
Junpei, which door do you want?
At last, Junpei's mind was already made up.
Wir nehmen auch die 8. I think I'm gonna go with dot 8. Okay, 8 it is. Yeah. Alright then, that means June's gotta go through 7. What? Why? What?
Santa grimaced and muttered angrily to himself, but finally began to explain.
If the 6 of us are gonna keep going without leaving anyone behind, there are only 3 ways we can do it. Plan A, go through door 7. Kannst glaube ich so.
Und so weiter, genau.
Genau. Das kann man alles mal stippen.
7 den. Okay.
And that's it. Those are our only options. In other words, 3, 4, and 7 and 8 can never go through the same doors. You get it now?
As Santa finished, June looked over at Junpei, tears welling up at the corners of her eyes.
Oh no. You're saying we aren't going to see each other again for a long time.
Junpei felt just as June did. He wanted to be at her side through whatever trials they were preparing to face. But he knew if they were to survive, he had to swallow his feelings. In order for the 6 of them to move forward, he and June had to be separated. He looked at June. He was scared to lose her, but he swallowed, steeled his resolve, and did his best to smile.
Hey, come on. You're just making it sound like we're never gonna see each other again. We're gonna split up, but only for a while. This is just like when we went into the 4 and 5 doors, remember? We got split up then too, but we all met back up. I bet 7 and 8 are just like that. Ah, sorry. You mean they're connected somewhere? Yeah. Probably. Probably.
She didn't sound very hopeful. It was 7 that interjected.
I'm sure they're gonna connect somewhere. Why? What makes you think so? If they don't connect, neither team can get through the door 9. In other words, the game would end right here. Zero's been on top of this shit so far. I don't think he'd blow it now. I'm damn sure that son of a bitch wants to have his fun as long as possible. He's not gonna end this game until we get through the 9 door.
June said nothing. The tears were gone, but her eyes were still sad as they looked at Junpei. He met them, and with what reassurance he could manage, laid his hand gently on her shoulder.
Everything's gonna be fine. We're gonna see each other again, I promise.
June bit her lip and gave him an almost imperceptible nod.
Yeah. Promise?
Her voice was barely above a whisper. Santa's voice shattered the moment.
Oh, you guys are done, right?
He stretched and continued.
Anyway, that's pretty much it. Clover and I will both go into separate groups. I figure I'll take 7 and Clover can take 8. And any problems with that, Clover?
Clover looked away and was silent for a moment.
Whatever.
It was more of a dismissal than an agreement, but Santa didn't seem to care.
Alright, we are ready to go then. Let's move.
At Santa's command, the group split and headed for their respective doors. Santa, 7 and June walked toward door 7, while Clover, Lotus and Junpei headed for door 8. For a long moment they stood in front of the door. Then Lotus laid her hand against her chest and turned to Junpei and Clover.
Are you ready? Yeah.
Yeah.
Then shall we go?